Filippo, welcome to Curation Conversations, where we're talking about the curation industry, but with people that have been formative in creating kind of curation strategy around the technology that really helps bring a lot more value to the programmatic ecosystem. So please tell me about yourself and your role and how you actually even got into, curation and the Onetag business.
Thanks for having me, first of all. So I've been in this industry for a long time, more than 25 years now, which shows a little bit my age, unfortunately, but I'm trying to hide it a little bit. So I started in Italy. I think I cover pretty much the whole spectrum of media and advertising. I started as a journalist, actually, reading the news live in an independent radio station in Milan. And after that, I worked for many years in the offline world with magazine, newspapers, in marketing. And then after that, I jumped into digital, mobile, programmatic, and so on and so forth. So I've been working internationally for the last 10 years. I lived in Sweden for 3 years with a family in Stockholm, which was a very interesting experience. Very nice country, easy to live in with the family, with the kids. And I moved to London 6 years ago, where I'm here still enjoying the vibe of programmatic and digital in London. I started working for Onetag a couple of years ago, and I found this company to be something interesting, something very different from the typical programmatic players, American, UK players, French ones. Actually, I think we are the only Italian company with a global footprint in programmatic, which is fun. So I feel a little bit proud about that.
Yeah, definitely.
And Onetag is a company who originated 10 years ago in Tuscany, which is a fantastic region in Italy, in Pisa, where there's the Leaning Tower. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a nice city. And the fun facts about Pisa is that actually was where the father of the modern science was born, so Galileo Galilei, which is interesting because he was one of the challenger of the modern science. He was the father of the modern science, someone who was really intrigued about changing the status quo, and someone who's very interested about observing the reality, challenging that with experience and refinement. So I think the inception of the way we approach curation on our side was already there. Yeah. And the other fun fact about Pisa that I was not aware of is that there was the first node of the internet in Italy in 1986, actually. So the sparkle of internet was actually in Tuscany, in Pisa. So probably there's something special about this little city where we have the tech hub of the company, where we have all the data scientists and the engineers. So this is how we started. And the other fun thing about this company is that we are working on the sales side, with publishers, but we represent, somehow the demand side because we work in curation. But we started as a DSP. As a demand-side platform. Yeah. And back then, 10 years ago, we started that journey, and all of a sudden, we were in front of one of the biggest advertisers in the world, Procter & Gamble, for whom we worked to create the first, I would say, inception of what is today curation, because they were looking for a new way of addressing supply, having in mind the buyer's KPIs, not just being able to buy inventory for the sake of inventory, but they were really intrigued about the opportunity to find the right users, the right placements behind a specific inventory. And this is how our founder, Daniel, started to work. He's 31 years old, so very young guy. And back then he was even younger, but he was super interested in this project. And this is how we started to understand that there was an opportunity to create something new. Yeah. And this is the inception of Onetag.
Wow, that's an incredible story. I've got so many questions. So I'm going to go back, first of all, your kind of legacy in media coming from that content production. You really understand the power then of creativity, content, and what supply means
Absolutely.
to brands. And so do you bring that experience to your role today and the conversations you're having around curation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I haven't worked only on the supply side, on publishers. I worked also at the agency, brands. So I think it's very interesting to understand the different perspectives of the actors in the ecosystem. Publishers, I'm very passionate about publishers because I've been working for many years on the publisher side, and I know how painful it has been to understand the ecosystem, the programmatic. At the beginning, it was really about being defensive and trying to protect the power that publishers were having at the time, and they still have. But they were probably a bit struggling to embrace the change, I would say, in the beginning. But I understood the reason for that, because it was really difficult. It was a transformation, and the speed of the transformation was so fast. So bringing that perspective into the tech players that work with publishers and service buyers, I think is really interesting, important, because the nuances are important. What I always say is that in programmatic, everyone tends to do the same things, or at least they say they do the same things. The difference is how you do the same things.
Yeah.
This is really the approach that actually makes people stand out sometimes. Everyone's talking about curation nowadays, right? But the flavors of curation are very different, right? So there are people that work with curation with proprietary technologies, others that use third-party technologies. Everything has a legitimacy in saying that they work with curation, but it's important to explain the differences on how you do that and what's your approach.
Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? Like you said, we find as well, there's so many different definitions of curation, but actually, do we need to define it, or is it just how do you use curation or technologies like Onetag to solve a problem, as you mentioned in the case of P&G?
I think starting by, when you look at investors' pitches and presentations, you always start with the problem, right? And then your solution, and then the product you are proposing. So I think being clear about what type of challenges are you here to solve is important. And the way we see it in general is that there are probably, if I think about programmatic, why programmatic has come together, my approach is that, my vision on that is that it has come together to bring automation, right? To make the selling and buying ads automated and efficient and flawless somehow, which is somehow happening, I would say, even though there is still too much complexity in my view. I think we tend to overcomplicate too much something that should be simple in its principles, right? Exactly. But I think what we overlooked for too many years is the central point about what we are here to do, which is bringing outcomes, bringing results, business results, advertising results, if we don't talk about business results. And the reason why we are not there yet is because, again, the complexity of making this real-time buying and selling happen is complicated. It's difficult. It's like the stock exchange market for advertising is very complicated. And so I think the complexity and the cost associated to working in programmatic are still very, very important in terms of as a challenge. If you think about the demand-side platforms, the DSPs, they cannot listen to the whole traffic that is available in the world, right? They have to decide how much of their bandwidth, their cloud cost can be associated to every specific partner, the QPS, the query per second that they have to associate. Yeah. And this limits their ability to be able to discover the right inventory. But there's another interesting element that I always consider, which is the information that is made available by the publishers, by the sellers, for the buyers. Think about going into a shop, in a grocery shop, and you want to buy a product on the shelf, and you pick it up on the shelf and you don't find any information on the labels of the product. Yeah. How can you make an informed decision? Very difficult. The same happens on the placements of the inventory of the publishers. The amount of information that is available for the buyers, for the DSP, to really understand if this placement is good or bad is very limited. Hence, the approach is still the burn and learn. You need to buy something, chew it, and understand if this is good or bad in terms of outcomes and results. Yeah. And this is not an efficient process, because obviously you need to waste a lot of money before you get an understanding of what is good or bad. Yeah. So curation can bring actually the solution for that, because it can reduce the return on investment for DSPs to pre-optimize the bid stream, the inventory that goes in front of them. and try to have to bring enriched information, which is, again, very useful to make an informed decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, quite rightly, there's been a lot of conversations around how curation can help solve for, an advertiser's desire for a certain level of quality in what they're buying, not just the outcomes. So when you're looking at, curation through the lens of Onetag, you're really being able to provide an advertiser with both of those aspects to inform their media buy. So to your point, less wastage, better ROI, but also the safety that they can be risk averse.
The suitability, yeah, absolutely. I think, also here, I think nuances are interesting and important. People talk about brand safety or brand suitability. I think to be more, pragmatic and realistic, what we can promise and do is more offer brand suitability so again, talking about quality, reducing the waste. Brand safety is trickier. I mean, there are global companies doing brand safety. Sometimes they stumble also in issues and problems because it's a very difficult way of detecting what is safe or not safe, etc. The suitability talks more about the contextual relevance of a placement, of a page, of a publisher. So I think this is something that is more resonates better to our ability to detect and enrich the information that we have at hand. In general, we filter, I think, more than 59% of the inventory that we get from the publishers at the gates.
Yeah.
So 60% goes out at the beginning. And then we do another refinement, like 83%, before it goes in front of a DSP. So we do two types of refinements before we pass over the inventory to the DSP partners. So the bid stream is very, very optimized, very qualitative in that sense. And this helps obviously to make decisions faster and better for the outcomes that everyone wants to have.
Yeah. You make a good point around outcomes because we mentioned it a few times. Like, I do sometimes think when you think about audience buying and you're talking to brands, it very much resonates with them that this is kind of a branded campaign. It's CPM, it's cost per thousands, it's getting eyeballs, it's higher frequency. But as clients and advertisers want to move closer to being able to have accountable media strategies across any type of media they're buying, do you see that as a big area of progression in curation where it's more outcomes led in terms of sales and ROI? At the bottom of the funnel, so to speak?
I think so. The problem and the potential solution for that problem is that, there are two different brains, the DSP brain and the exchange or the SSP brain, and they don't talk to each other. They are very clever brains, but they don't talk to each other that much. And so how can you bring those two brains to talk to each other and to understand each other? So that's the next evolution, the innovation that we also are working on, which is bringing about, almost like a data loop that basically helps the sell side to make informed decisions about what the buy side wants. And this would potentially bring real value and real outcomes. And this is, I think, one element of innovation and the future of curation. The other one is being omni-channel, being omnipresent. I think that's another element where obviously we're not talking about only web display, we're talking about audio, which is a very interesting channel, which is coming into the equation with a very high growth. Yeah. CTV obviously is already booming across multiple markets. So I think curation is an approach, is a way of addressing real problems with a very dedicated approach, with the right technology and with the right approach. I think that's the interesting element. So when you said, should we define curation or not? I think we should define it, but it shouldn't be just one definition that applies to everyone. Yeah. I think the approach is important, right? Because when last year everyone was talking about curation and people were saying, this is just a reproposing of the same way of doing things that we were doing many years ago. Maybe in some cases, in some other cases not. I mean, but it's a constant evolution and trying to find new approaches to old problems somehow.
Yeah, that makes sense. That does. So you're talking about, so back to the story of Onetag in Pisa. You talked about Galileo and the new kind of frontier of science. If you cannot move in this industry for conversation around AI or agents, and we talked a little bit about the future of curation. I mean, how are you thinking about that as a business? What's your personal opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in a very pragmatic way always. I mean, I'm always tend to be very pragmatic and realistic in the way I see the businesses. We started optimizing traffic using data science. What does it mean? Machine learning. Machine learning is a subset of AI. Everyone talks about AI. Everyone applies AI for everything that is machine learning or something like that. We don't do any generative AI in the company. We don't do that, but we have a very long-lasting history about applying data science and machine learning to really bring the automation and the intelligence, predictive intelligence, to programmatic. So that's how we approach it. I think there is a ton of opportunities when it comes to applying new AI solutions into programmatic, definitely to reduce the overheads, costs for operations and stuff. We started to think about that last year, about bringing almost like a co-pilot approach to curation, to the curation platform. But again, we were not entirely sure that we were really solving problems. We were kind of just following, the new shiny thing about saying that we have something new in AI. So we decided to stop that project and stay more focused on what we can really do better than others, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I'm super interested and a little bit scared sometimes, when it comes to what's the next frontier about AI. But I think I see already that this wave will change completely the way we operate in programmatic in the next 3 to 5 years. So I think it's also very exciting because our way of thinking is always, my way of thinking is always very linear. I'm thinking about the future based on what I saw in the past.
Yeah.
But AI is completely different. So I think the future is something completely different than what we are all thinking. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's like you said, it is exciting, but there's a slight amount of fear going into that unknown.
I think it's more for me, it's more exciting than fear. I think I'm more intrigued to see what's happening. Yeah. And hopefully, also big problems that we are facing in the world, climate change, etc. Hopefully, these type of things will be addressed and solved by the AI revolution.
Yeah, there's something that taking that technology. Well, yeah, definitely taking that premise, taking that technology, and as you said, that's what we try to do throughout programmatic is applying that to a real world problem. So we kind of anticipate that things might be quicker, might be easier. I know us as a business, we're really looking at it from our productivity perspective of just how can we make jobs and lives easier of people. But it's saying you've got to get excited about it and test and learn a little bit to be able to get the most out of what it means for your business outputs.
Yeah, and I was talking about climate change. I think curation done right could be also very good for the climate change, reducing carbon emissions. Because again, reducing the waste means that there is less cost in servers, there is less wastage in money, so I think that's also another interesting element. I haven't seen that much interest yet from clients. We have a solution. I think we have tested our solution with real data with an external partner, Sedara, a very interesting company. And the data says that we are 94% more efficient than the industry average in carbon emissions. So I said, wow, are we sure the data is correct? Yes, it's correct. When I bring this data in front of clients, everyone likes it, but no one acts on that.
So it's not something to invest in.
No, not yet. Which is a little bit frustrating. I would have expected last year when we launched this solution that what people were kind of jumping on it, but somehow not yet. They have other priorities and they're thinking about something else. I think it's coming, but not with the speed that I would have liked.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we saw a similar kind of trend, and then you look at the likes of Scope 3 going into brand safety and performance as well now. I wonder if that is because there's a definite conversation to be had with advertisers, but there's not necessarily a dedicated budget to apply. Yeah. And does sustainability become kind of table stakes with partners that you work with? And therefore having a solution, I think it becomes like a hygiene factor as opposed to something that's a specific sell. But
I think the evolution of Scope 3 is also interesting. Those type of evolutions and solutions, I think they become very interesting when they become easy to use and action, because obviously simplicity, again, as I was saying before, there's too much complexity. So we need to reduce the complexity, make the complex stuff stay behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And everything that stays on the UI, the user interface for traders, for buyers, has to be simple and understandable and flawless in the way they operate on that. Because again, I imagine the life of a trader today is, oh my God, too many DSPs to use, too many reporting, too many data to look at. So I think AI in that sense could actually be super, super good, in terms of giving insights and actionable insights. Yeah. I think that's an interesting play. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got so many decisions to make on a regular basis, and it's disintermediated by the tech. I mean, you mentioned before, there's that kind of the bridging between DSP and SSP data hasn't necessarily been straightforward enough to then give the value that would, say, a closed ecosystem like Meta would give to a trader. So, I mean, do you have conversations with clients around, the two-step approach that Onetag are doing is really helping kind of clean and control the programmatic ecosystem for that brand?
Yeah.
Do you have conversations around the divestment into the, kind of programmatic as a channel, if you will, as opposed to these walled gardens? Does it help us make the open web be more competitive?
Yes, the answer is yes. I'm sighing because it's always like a difficult conversation because, I mean, walled gardens work very well. They are efficient. They have data. They have everything works very well from multiple standpoint. But it's a walled garden again. It's a limited view into what is available out there. And if you think about independent journalism, think about independent content producers that are available out there. I think it's about sustaining that type of production with again the open internet. So I think keeping a balance, I think, is important. Walled gardens things work very well, but you shouldn't be over-indexing on walled gardens just because everything works there. You should be always testing and learning different type of solutions. And if you think about omnichannel, audio, CTV, there's no walled garden there. There's big publishers, there's audio producers, etc. So I think digital of home is another interesting channel which is booming right now. So again, you need to diversify your strategy as always with again a pragmatic approach. Test different ways of activating your campaigns. And also when it comes to curation, you need to test different type of solutions. What we have experienced when working with agencies and partners, that sometimes they do exactly like that. They put in competition multiple deals across different platforms, and they basically see which ones absorbs more impressions with the better results. Probably something that you also do on your side, right? I guess, right?
Yeah, and look at exactly what that competitive advantage is. I think trying it too far, looking at programmatic in isolation, which we do because we're in the weeds, and I talk frequently around curation and I'm very passionate about what it can help solve for, because better monetization for the media owners, but also better results for advertisers. But I think being able to look holistically at a picture of how do you provide advertisers and agencies and our clients with something that is more straightforward, is something they've got more control over from a quality perspective, but also delivers outcomes like those easy walled gardens, is something that's going to be really imperative to being able to protect the quality of the open web. And I know we've been working a lot with publishers to help them kind of generate net new revenue opportunities, but also solve for that buy-side asymmetry of data. So do you see, from a curation really driving value to both sides of the ecosystem, even though predominantly, we're kind of an advertiser business? Yeah,
absolutely. And again, going back to the reaction of publishers to curation, the initial reaction, curation is stealing money from us. Curation is not bringing value. Yeah. In some cases, it could happen. If there are bad actors, people that are not working with the right approach. But I like to look at data always, and the data that we have been able to extract and look is that curation has been bringing more competition. 25% more competition in terms of bid density. Wow. So, which is more competition brings higher prices. 20% increase in prices for the publishers, which is good. So I think on the publisher side, I mean, the main KPI when they work with a sell-side platform is the check at the end of the month. How much money are you bringing? But it's also about, is it this demand incremental? Is this demand diversified? And curation brings this type of elements. I think it's a more diversified type of demand. Demand means advertisers, agencies, DSP partners. If done right, again, if done with the right technology, if done by thinking about solving real problems, curation can help publishers to diversify their revenue stream and to basically complement the top performers with the middle of the stack performers and so on and so forth. I think it's a good approach, but you need to stay vigilant always as a publisher, right? You need to understand, ask questions, and reevaluate constantly your partners to understand if they're really bringing value or not, right? So I think it's being vigilant is important. Being too close to innovation I think it's not the right approach in general.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's such a good point on the net incrementality that you can deliver through curation is an ideal measurement for the success of that demand.
Yeah.
And I know we've probably discussed this as well at length in terms of just how we can help publishers better understand what that opportunity is, but then also bridge the audience gap and that data asymmetry for advertisers to want to invest in programmatic. Feels like it will drive net incrementality too.
Yeah.
You mentioned you love data. I know you said you're looking at reports and stuff, but let's talk a little bit about data, because there's been this fundamental shift that has come with curation of the application of, say, even third-party data and first-party data being done on the supply side. And that's opened up a lot of opportunity for other people to get into actually monetizing their own data asset through curation pipes. What are you seeing there in terms of trends and value and benefits?
Interesting. I think there's definitely a movement. I mean, a general movement that data moving from the demand side to the supply side. This general movement is because there is a progressive signal loss. The closer you are to the final user who engages with the content on the web page, the better. Think about the addressability. The latest that I've seen from IAB UK was saying that only 20% of the inventory is addressable, because 50% is already out of the equation because there are no cookies, Safari, Firefox. Out of the 50% of Chrome, 40% use ad blockers and they block cookies.
Yeah.
And out of the remaining portion, cookie matching is another problem. So this reduces the real addressable market with cookies to only 20%. And this is obviously our problem. So how can you address the people, the audience with the right data? Hence, the rise of first-party data, which is really, really important on the other side, and the new solutions regarding contextual targeting. We are using a semantic engine for contextual targeting, which is a proprietary solution. It works with a knowledge graph, so it tends to not rely on keywords, more on topics. Yeah. So it's a wider term to basically understand the content of the page.
Okay.
And this blended with the attention metrics, with the publisher signals, quality signals, this really enriches the single impression that comes from the publisher before it reaches the DSP. So I think this evolution is really interesting. Plus, obviously, being able to be interoperable with new solutions, cohort approaches, the privacy box example is a good example, but there are very interesting solutions, independent ones that are available in the market, where you can start to really understand that there is not one solution that can solve the new addressable issues that are coming in the market. You need to be interoperable. You need to be, again, testing and blending those solutions in order to be able to offer something that is meaningful for the buyers.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think there is this new era of global addressability, really, where, to your point, you want to be able to easily find the audience however you address them, whether it's contextual or whether it's with an ID or a cookie, which maybe we don't get into cookie deprecation. No, otherwise we could be here for a while. And it's been talked about a lot. But, being able to find those audiences in different but meaningful ways in one package that then gets optimized on the supply side. And then, to your point, closer to signals, so better match rates, better control of quality should actually work for advertisers to simplify how they find audiences. So as you said, again, how do we keep it easy to find audiences in different ways, especially when there's different ways of targeting, but there's different opportunities to making sure that we are consent first and kind of obliging to different global regulations, etc. So hopefully it kind of cuts through that.
While you were speaking, I mean, I always tend to try to translate our world into the real world, right? I mean, what we lack is standards, standardization of systems talking to each other, solutions, cookies going away. Okay, what is the new standard? There's not one standard. It's like almost the plugs of the electricity. You are changing the plugs of the electricity worldwide, and you have multiple ways of doing that, which is still happening when you travel, right? You go to the United States, you need to change your plugs. You need to go to Southeast Asia, you change another one. How come that we are talking about AI and we are still not having basic standards to operate in this industry, which is a bit weird to me.
It's an inhibitor, isn't it? I think at the end of the day, to being able again get investment into a key channel that, to your point, is going to grow because there's more formats coming in. So I think we've learned a lot from having display as probably like that kind of first jump off. Learn how to do things, how not to do things. And that, as you mentioned, is now TTV is growing, audio is growing, digital out of home. Do you think there's something in that, curation will be kind of intrinsic or native to those formats because we've learned from how we've had to clean up maybe display and video?
Yeah, I think so. I think this seems to be like a natural evolution. And I'm also thinking, what the evolution of the players, the ad tech players will be in the future. Will we still operate with demand-side platforms and supply-side platforms, or we will basically have one solution that basically encompasses everything? And curation could be something like that. If you think about, curation back in the days was done by the DSPs, and then it was done by the supply side with very basic solutions, ad networks, etc. And then there was this new evolution with sell-side decisioning, which is a bit more tech-driven, more interesting and exciting. And having two different systems that don't talk to each other could be good for some reason, to keep, the right balance between the buyers and the sellers. But again, it brings a lot of complexity and it brings data not to be used in the right way. So why not thinking about one platform that does everything? I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but that could be one evolution of the future of programmatic, I think.
It's funny, as we were talking before we started recording about dystopian, I just wondered how we move forward. It's like maybe it's this convergence of actually the curation is the internet. Curation is the kind of that programmatic entity that you don't need a buy and a sell side because it bridges that gap to provide more effectiveness, more efficiency, like I say, cost savings.
Yeah, and maybe the word curation will disappear. It's about, it's become like a commoditized way of...
Curation Conversations, they can't disappear.
No, the word, not the approach. I mean, you're going to do things right, and then it's going to become, we're talking, you remember years ago we were talking about the year of mobile. The mobile advertising was the year of mobile.
Or every year for like 10 years.
Exactly. So curation, I don't think is going to be the same, but I'm not too much interested in those buzzwords that continue to be repeated. I'm interested in the solutions, really understanding the details of the solutions, which is the interesting thing. And if there's innovation behind it, fantastic. And if there's more competition, even better. More competition, like for the publisher prices, right? More competition, more innovation, and more excitement about staying strong.
Yeah, no, I think you're quite right. And there is I always talk to our clients about that. Again, divesting out the walled gardens is because you've got this rich tapestry of audiences and creative propositions, and you can build a better brand experience in the open web than the cookie cutter approach of an in-stream social platform, for example. So actually, being able to bring competitive advantage to the forefront of for advertisers kind of relies on us being able to organise ourselves better and make it easier to give them curation to them in a meaningful way, but quite a simple way. So we talked a lot around the industry, like technical, but I love the analogies that you've brought to the table as well to try and keep it, keep people understanding where we're at. I'm an advertiser, I've heard about curation, or a media owner. Like, where should I start? Like, what should I be thinking about, perhaps? And maybe this is based on conversations that you've have with clients when they considering curation.
In terms of where to start when someone wants to understand curation. I mean, be prepared. Use ChatGPT for put down good questions. Challenge the players that are knocking to your door. Be vigilant. Understand. First of all, I think it's important to understand the how. Right? I mean, okay, I have a curation partner in front of me. Great. Tell me about your solution. Tell me about your technology. You need to be understanding tech to check really what do you have in front of you, because pitch decks, sales decks, all the same. Understanding the difference between one solution and another one might be tricky, but I think understanding if a curation platform in front of you has proprietary technology, how long they've been in business with doing that, what type of case studies, obviously it's important to understand, and obviously cost associated, business model behind it, risk associated, test budgets, there's multiple questions. I think it's important. And the lower the barriers, the better for testing purposes, right? So if there's a solution that doesn't cost money, additional money to test as a platform, if it's easy to be understood, if it's easy to be demoed in a 10, 5, 50 minutes demo. So these type of things are important, right? I mean, curation platforms that bring all the features that are already available on the DSP side, I don't understand that approach, right? Because they're already on the other side. Why do you bring the same features, the same filtering on the supply side? Yeah. What are you trying to do? I think it's about being complementary and being efficient in the way we are bringing, again, solutions without additional complexity, without additional operational overhead to those poor traders that are always, again, I'm thinking about them a lot, because they are the end user, right? The end activation players that we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, make their life easier. And that's such a good point. You don't want to just replicate functionality, because all you're doing then is shifting cost around.
Exactly.
Not adding value or removing some of that cost and latency. So I love that. I think it's a really good point of just digging into what you're trying to solve for and like how curation can help do that. And
also I think it's important on the other side, when I put myself in my shoes, in our shoes, and when you're in front of a client, I always say to my commercial teams, ask questions. Yeah. Don't just pitch. Try to understand what the problems are they facing, what type of opportunities they are looking at. Try to understand the use case of the buyer before proposing solutions, right? Because again, if you open up the laptop and start to spit out your stuff without understanding, understanding and asking questions sometimes is more difficult than telling your story, because your story you have learned by heart, and then it's easier. Asking questions could be putting you in a tougher spot, but it's better because at least there's trust between the players involved in this potential transaction. I think the element of trust is what sometimes is not present in this industry, right? People are not trusting themselves, and there's always something murky that seems to be happening. So it's important to re-bringing trust in the conversation is really, really important. And to do so, you need to be honest, you need to be pragmatic, you need to be data-driven in the way you approach the opportunities.
Oh, I love that, actually, because we talked a bit about AI, and I think there's always something about, people being part of business is because of trust, because of accountability, and the psychology of doing business requires human interaction. So I think we all shouldn't be fearful of AI. We should embrace it, as you said, for innovation.
And again, it's a technology business, but it's a people-led business. Yeah. It's always about understanding people needs, understanding the challenges that people are facing. And technology is great, but people are even greater, I think. So it's important that we always remind ourselves that there is a people-led business, not always a technology.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. That's really cool. Well, thank you for joining me. I appreciate everything that we've talked through, and it's really great to hear about the history as well of the business and where you've come from on your journey in your career. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.